So today is November 7th, 2014, and we're having an animal communication session with Yukon. So, Jan, you had informed me that Yukon is from the Montgomery County SPCA. He is a 2-year-old. Is he a pit bull or an American Staffordshire Terrier?
A pit and
Okay.
a lot of hound in him.
Okay, awesome, thank you. And he is located in Amsterdam, New York. So you said that Yukon has been with the shelter since July, and was he an owner surrender?
Yes, he was.
Okay, great. All right, so let me go ahead and call in Yukon. Yukon, please. Okay, so I'm just going to introduce myself to him. So my name is Danielle, and Jan is very interested in asking you some questions. He says that's fine. He says he likes people, calls himself a good-natured guy. He's very friendly with most people. When he's in front of somebody he doesn't know or hasn't met yet, he does like to do the, as he calls it, the curiosity sniff towards them before approach, but I see the approach being very positive and gentle a couple seconds after that hesitation, which is typical for the average dog. Okay. So he is set. I just asked him, are you aware that you are up for adoption? We should start there. He says he knows and understands what this is about. And I ask that, Jan, because not all animals understand that they're up for adoption. They don't all understand what the purpose of an animal shelter is or being amongst all the other animals they smell around them. But in this case, he has full awareness, so we don't need to explain. All right, so Jan, what is your first question for Yukon?
I would like to know how his left eye feels.
Okay, sure. So Yukon, how about that? He just calls it squinty. There is a feeling definitely of, and I can see it in his photograph, his left eye, the lid itself feels very heavy on top. It's almost like his left eye is sunken in. He tells me it's not diseased, but he does call the eyeball itself recessed, as if it is, I get like a being pulled backwards more, sort of feeling back into the head. If I was to ask him to show me the eye itself underneath the lid part that I can't see in your photo, he tells me, again, it's not diseased. There's not redness. There's not irritation. He only has partial vision out of it. If your eyelid was totally lifted up, would you see more? He says he would see a little bit more, but not that much. His best eyesight does indeed come out of his good eye, his right eye. It doesn't. His left eye does not itch. It doesn't feel bad to him. He says it's mostly due, he feels that the oddness of the eye is mostly due to the folding of the skin above and below the lid itself. And it's been like this for a while, Jan. It doesn't feel like this is any sort of recent injury. He's had this for a good portion of his life. What do you guys know, or what is your vet diagnosed regarding the eye?
Well, we didn't have a vet look at it, and that's what I wanted to ask him, if he would like to have a vet look at his eye.
Yeah, let's see what he says. He says, I don't mind people looking at my eye. People have been looking at my eye for a long time. Okay. He says people are allowed to touch it and look around it. He's got a lot of energy, this dog. So he sometimes is a bit of a busybody in that he wants to sniff everything and be curious about everything. So I do see him having a tough time being patient enough to hold still for the vet. But I'm going to ask him, if a vet looks at you, here's what a vet might be dressed in so you can see the uniform. They would want you to hold still so they could basically palpate, take a look, maybe shine a light in the eye. Do you think that the vet could glean any useful information from the eye, Yukon? He's not sure. He honestly doesn't think that eyelid itself could really ever be lifted. When I feel the muscle tone over the back part of this is from the area of the lid all the way to the back of the front of the left ear, I should say. I just want to sense all that muscle, please. There's a flaccid, sort of restful, the muscle is resting heavily forward towards that eye. I do get that he's got sensation and tone there in the musculature, and in case that is influencing, the flappiness over the eye itself. There's also a feeling of, how when you have pins and needles effects because your foot is falling asleep, sort of feeling, there is some of that sensation, which, is very minor. It doesn't bother or faze him at all, but that is in some of the region of the muscle that hangs over the eye. It's interesting. The eye itself, he calls it a bit mutated now, and when I ask him what that means, he just says, I use the word mutated because it looks different than my other eye. So this would be the actual eye itself. Again, he says it doesn't hurt.
Okay.
I mean, Jan, by all means, certainly
right.
you guys can get him checked out, but that is what he says about his eye. And the muscle above it. So make sure the vet checks out the muscle above it, too, because this dog doesn't seem to have 100% control of the musculature hanging above the eye. But he does have it on that side of the face and the majority of the section of his upper left forehead.
Okay. Does he know how this was injured, if it was an injury?
Yeah, sure. Let me see. Was this injury-based? Were you born with it? He says no. He did acquire it when he was young. He gives me the age around 6 months. What he shows me is a stick poking him.
Okay.
Did the stick poke you in the eye? Very close to the eye. I don't actually get it got him in the eye, but it got him from the side of the eye, and it did push in. And at the time of impact, it did hurt. He actually shows me a little bit of oozing bloody liquid. Okay, at that point, I wouldn't call it 100% blood, but yeah, there was damage to the eye and the lid at that time. He got over it. He doesn't feel that anybody really did anything about it at the time. He does think that somebody looked at it, like a human. Was it a vet? No, he says it wasn't a vet, but his human looked at it. I mean, somebody cared enough to check it out, and they decided there wasn't anything that was going to be done. So
it wasn't that somebody did that to him, and the person
somebody
checked.
Cause, injury, and purpose? No, he says.
Okay, all right. Good. Okay.
Yeah.
And now, if you can ask him, does his leg hurt him where he was bit just the other day by Geisha?
Okay, sure. Is this a front, a left, a right, or a back?
It is the front right.
Okay, thank you. So let's focus on your front right, where you got bit by, I assume that Geisha is a dog?
Yes, dog neck.
Okay. Does
Kennel.
that hurt? He tells me he's really tough by nature in that, yes, he's feeling it still. It's not a big deal. He got over it. He tells me that she surprised him.
Yes.
Came at him and surprised him. He didn't cause this. He didn't set her
didn't.
off, other than by his very presence of it feels like he was walking by and she nabbed him.
She got into his kennel.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, he really calls her the culprit.
Yes.
She's the one to blame, not him.
Is he okay with Geisha? Do they have a good relationship?
Yeah. What does she look like? What kind of dog is she?
She is a white pit bull with a black around her eye.
Okay, so I show him that image of Geisha. How do you feel about Geisha? What's your relationship like? He says she's okay. She doesn't like small spaces. He thinks that she as a dog is best when she's outside the kennel. She's on her better behavior outdoors. When she comes inside, he just shows me being like, I don't quite trust her all the time. He calls her a good dog, though. She just needs more space. She's going, according to him, a bit stir-crazy. She also has an awful lot of energy. He doesn't blame her, quite honestly, for the incident of being bit. He's very, very forgiven.
Mm-hmm.
Yukon he's I'm going to call it a very gentle soul. He's a very gentle soul. He's a nice guy. He's got a lot of energy. I mean, he is, granted, 2 years old. So he's quite, I wouldn't call him hyper at all, but I would call him quite active, and he likes to get outside himself. But compared to him and Geisha, he thinks she's going stir-crazy, and he's dealing quite well, actually, in the atmosphere of the animal shelter. Overall, his relationship with her, he doesn't want to go home with her, is the first thing he says. He wouldn't want to be adopted out with her. He thinks that his opinion, and animals have other opinions of other animals, which I find very intriguing, but his opinion of her is that he thinks she needs a strong handler, a strong guide, somebody who has had a dog before and understands dogs. He doesn't think she'd be the best with an owner who doesn't really understand canine body language and all that, whereas he himself, he tells me he wants a family. He wants to go home with a family.
Okay, I was going to ask where he wanted to go. Is everything else okay with his health?
Sure. He believes that it is. Now, he does tell me the front half of his body is bigger and more muscular than the second half, which includes the hindquarters, and this is just due to his breed design. He thinks that's part of the hound part of him is creating that, but there's nothing wrong or off. It's just he's kind of more heavily strengthened in the front half. That's part of the body design. He just brings me back to that bite wound. No big deal. He thinks it's healing already, not infected as well, is
Good.
his outlook on it. And keep in mind, Jan, you nor he nor I should say, are vets, so we can't diagnose, treat, or prescribe, but that is his word, so I want to honor him and tell you what he's hearing.
We gave him antibiotics and and pain medication. It was a little an inflammatory, so it looks better.
Well, he'll take anything by mouth with total ease, is what he tells me. So honestly, he thinks, treating him was easy, and he's not feeling it very much today. No big deal. He doesn't even think he's going to have much of a scar.
Yeah.
Now, he does tell me he's got a big appetite, and he hopes whoever takes him in the future will feed him more food. He loves his food.
Are we feeding him enough?
Let's see. He does feel yes, especially since he's not getting as much exercise as he would if he was in the typical home that had a big backyard fenced in, where he'd have more exercise throughout the day.
Okay.
He is getting enough walks. He likes the staff. He tells me that there's a woman who he sees a lot. Is this a staff member? He says not sure. It's either a staff member or a volunteer who's there a lot. Tall, slender, thin is how he describes her. He really likes her. And she is busy working. He shows me an image of her like with a mop in her hand, and she's ignoring him. He really likes her, and he's tried to get her attention before. He'd actually like to go home with her. I'm not sure if you know who this is, Jan, but he brings that up.
Is it Kim?
Is it Kim? Do you know her name? Well, she adores me, but she takes care of all of us, is how he describes her.
Okay. All right. Okay. And that was my question, if he was being treated well, so that's good to know at the shelter. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, what I would like to know, because he does walk in circles a lot, and is this because of his eye or for another reason?
Gotcha. And Jan, is he doing this in his kennel or outside or both?
Both.
Okay.
I do know a little bit about his background. I think it may be because of that.
Okay, absolutely. So, Yukon, why do you circle both in your kennel as well as outside at times? Okay. So it has nothing to do with his brain. I do check that. He indicates no tumor or growth or anything of neurological involvement. You know, honestly, he keeps showing me an image of that eye, that left eye, having pressure put upon it by the muscle that feels heavy. I don't want to say, because I'm not sure if, this is how a vet would put it. I don't want to say, Jan, that the muscle over the eye, the skin over the eye is in paralysis mode, but there's something odd and heavy about it that I just don't get why it would feel like that, even though it doesn't hurt him. But again, mention that to your vet and see what they think at some point. But this seems to be influencing his turning to the left. Now, is the turning to the left, why are you doing this in your words, Yukon? Okay, aside from the eye influencing you, it's habit. Part of it's habit. He's been doing it. He's been doing it for a long time.
Right. And that was my concern, if it was, I don't want to get ahead of myself. Okay, so habit.
Let me ask him why this habit formed. Because he couldn't go any other direction. He had so much energy that he just kept going, round and round, and he was confined, at some point prior to coming to the shelter, which influenced his behavior. It was just kind of his way of getting his energy out because he was a young, healthy dog. People didn't walk him on the leash. Whoever his prior people were, he just says he didn't get out much.
And I didn't want to put any words in his mouth, and that's what I was wondering, if it was because we were told for a whole year he was tied to a tree, and if this is the reason why he walks in circles.
Gotcha. So let me ask that directly. Is that related to the tree? He says all I could do was go round and round. And sometimes his chain, so he was, tied to a tree. Whatever he was connected to, he shows me a chain. It would get tight, and then he'd have to unwind himself. He was smart enough to unwind himself, but he would get bored, and he would do this. And he was on, in his mind, a short chain. It wasn't big enough that he could, really get a lot of energy out in a way that's healthy for a dog. You know, he tells me that the people who did have him, it's like they patted him on the head, and they did offer him affection and TLC, although it was minimal. He wanted to be in the house, but he thinks he was banned from being in the house. Jan, do you know anything about why they didn't let him in the house?
I was told by this last person who had him for a year. Then he had a family before that. But this last person, the man said he brought him in the house, and that Yukon ate his pizza from the table. So the man put him outside. He wouldn't let him in the house anymore.
Okay. So Yukon, do you recall that event? He says, I just like food. I'll eat anything. Okay, so do you get that that's what the man told Jan, who's really, part of the shelter, the staff? And he just says yes, and he didn't think it was that big of a deal. He says if you found an M&M on the table, you'd swipe it too. In other words, he's just saying if you found a piece of food, why wouldn't you, the human, stop yourself from going and eating it? The man wasn't cruel, just FYI, but he does feel like he wasn't wanted. Yukon didn't feel wanted by the gentleman after that point. Also, the gentleman had things to do outside the home, and he just shows me himself the gentleman leaving the house, and Yukon being left to his own devices outside. Yukon also tells me he was a good boy being outside, even though he got bored at times. So I don't see him being one of those dogs who would bark his head off at the end of a leash. I see him being like, oh, okay, I'll just wait till he takes me in. All this dog wants is love, attention. He likes to be pet all over, and he loves his hindquarters to have human nails rubbed into and give him basically a butt rub.
Okay. Write that down. We were told before this man who chained him to the tree that he was in another home, and they weren't good to him. Is this true?
Okay, sure. Let's see. Is that what the gentleman told you guys?
Yes.
Okay. So, Yukon, how about that? Go back beyond the man. He says they didn't understand me when I asked, how were you treated physically by the family, the first family? He was confined as well. It feels like he was confined in a room much of the time. He was let out into the rest of the house on supervised visits. He was a bit wild as a young thing, as a puppy. He doesn't think they trained him adequately or taught him good manners. His good manners that, well, I should call them decent manners. His decent to good manners right now developed as he aged, like 8 months and beyond. Were you treated poorly, in your opinion, by the prior family? He was isolated a lot, and he was yelled at times. And he doesn't like to be yelled at, nor does he understand raised voices. They're kind of confusing to him. It makes him want to turn his head, hide it, and walk away.
Okay. And that's why the second man took him, just because he felt he was abused. But I don't think the second home, this man, really had the time for him.
Okay.
That's what happened there. So.
Okay, gotcha. Do you think the second man had time for you? He says, no, he was busy. He thinks that he calls us an older gentleman, like a mature gentleman. I don't get like a young 20-year-old, guy. I get older, mature. Has wisdom about dogs, actually. He says he just didn't have time for me. He thinks he had his heart in the right place when he took him, Yukon, in. But Yukon was, again, a bit, as he calls himself, a bit wild and exuberant in his energy. And, again, he needed to be taught manners.
Okay.
It was basically a dog being a dog, and a human not guiding him on, how to be.
Yeah. Yeah, I just don't think the man who had him had the money or the patience for him.
Yeah.
Now, Yukon did go home. He was adopted to a family recently, but it didn't work out. It was only for a couple of days. We thought it was the right family, and I'm not sure the family told us the correct information why they were returning him. They said that, actually it was 4 days, and on day 4 that Yukon lunged after their cats. Yukon doesn't seem to bother cats, so I was wondering if he could tell us why he thinks, what happened.
All right, so let's start. So Yukon, the family you were with for 4 days, and he liked them very much, and they liked him. They were nice people, he says. Okay, so did you lunge after their family member, their cat? He says no. He says he stared at it, but I see him walking away and ignoring it. He thinks the cat was skittish around him because he's a dog. Did you lunge after? He says no. Did you stalk it? I did not. Did you corner it? No. Why do you think the people chose to bring you back to the shelter? He says, I really don't know. I'm confused by that. He thinks, though, that ultimately it was because he's too much dog. He's got a lot of strength and a lot of pull. I do see him like pulling a human on a leash, and him not walking beside you in a heel fashion. He thinks he was honestly a bit physically too much, too strong for them to handle. And they were like, oh, no, we chose the wrong dog.
Oh, dear. Okay.
But he still calls them nice people, and he wonders if they're going to come back. I'm going to let him know probably not, and that you are still at the shelter so that you can find your forever home. He says that's fine. You know,
okay,
nothing
good.
gets this dog down. He's got a really optimistic attitude, Jan, which is
wonderful.
wonderful.
I just love him.
Have you met him in person?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, he just comes across as very friendly, very nice, sociable, likes people, and interesting. I don't get a preference of, female over male or male over female. He just likes everybody.
Okay, good. I was going to ask him what kind of family he wanted. I would like to ask him, because that family made a comment, they had him almost potty trained. So I'm wondering, is he aware of when he is in a house that he should be going to the bathroom outside?
Okay. He understands, yes, that's indeed what people speak of me. So let me show him the sequence to be crystal clear with him. So, Yukon. So I want you to, yes, I'm showing him the image of being in a household. Let's pretend this is your future forever home. People have adopted you, you're in their house, and you feel the sensation of your bladder filling or of your colon filling, and now you need to eliminate. I want you to ensure that you get the people's attention by walking to the door, pawing at it. If they've got bells there, use your nose with the bells. And I'm going to show them whining or barking or doing something loud enough, because you got to be a smart dog. Sometimes humans don't always pay attention. Be a smart dog to get their attention. They'll open up the door. I show himself going outside and eliminating 1 and 2 out there, happily coming in and getting praise from the people. Do you understand that's what they want? People are going to want 100% of the time. He does understand that. He says he can do that. He was house trained at one point in his life. And then it's like, okay, the gentleman who kept him out in the yard by the tree, there's a feeling like you guys like, well, I'm outside all the time. I guess I can go anywhere. So it feels like he got a little bit lax, if you will, in his potty training skills, but he knows what's expected of him. And honestly, Jen, one of the easiest things you can do regarding, when people adopt him is actually say to him, if they don't have to believe in animal communication, but most humans talk to animals out loud anyway, so you might as well use out loud effective communication, which would sound like, Yukon, we are expecting you to go outside to go potty. When you have to go 1 and 2, your job is to let us know you have to go out. We'll open up the door. You go outside. We will thank you and praise you when you come back in. That is your job. It is a huge contribution to the household to help keep our floors clean. When I ask him, do you understand that verbiage? He says, absolutely. He says, I want to contribute to people by going for walks in the field. He calls them field walks. He loves getting outside. This dog would make a fantastic hiking partner for somebody because he's got a lot of attitude as far as let's get going. He's got a lot of optimism and moving forward constantly. Long walks would not tire him out. Being a hiking partner would really be ideal because it'd help him get his energy out in a good way. Jogging partner, he could do it, but it's really not his interest. He wants to sniff bushes and trees and inspect nature and where other dogs have been. If he was Jan kept in a home where people only had him as an indoor dog and outdoor in the backyard sort of dog, and they didn't choose to take him on walks, let me see how he could handle that. If it was a big enough backyard, he'd be okay with that, but quite honestly, he's extremely intelligent. He's also very mouthy, he tells me, in a positive way, where he utilizes his mouth and his tongue, and he just kind of explores his world with those things, so I wouldn't be surprised if he has an interest. You have an interest then, Yukon, in chewing on toys and mouthing toys and things of that sort. He says, yes, I like to put things in my mouth. So toys would be big for this dog. Big enough yard, and he wouldn't have to go for too many walks, but it is his preference.
Okay. We'll put that in his bio on the website. we'll make sure that's what he gets.
Nice. What else for him?
That was all that I had for him. Is there anything else he would like us to know?
Sure. So, Yukon, anything else you want them to know about you? He just says, I'm a good guy, friendly guy. I love back rubs and back scratches. He just is a touchy-feely kind of dog as long as he hasn't smelled something in the air and wants to basically go explore that. Then he'll leave the scene. He'll leave the attention and affection that he's receiving from human hands, okay, because he's distracted by the environment. This dog did not get to play very much when he was a puppy. And so he is like he's like a perpetual puppy in a 2-year-old body. He still has this desire to go out and explore because, according to him, he's here incarnated as him to see the world. He wants to get out to explore. Exploring is his middle name. He says he likes children. Small ones, though, it feels like he could be a little bit not paying attention, and he could accidentally step on their feet if they were crawling around or bump into them. Some dogs, Jan, have great spatial awareness just like some people do, and other dogs are kind of like bulls in china cabinets. I don't get he's a bull in a china cabinet, but he is closer toward the end of not really paying attention always to what's going on around him relative to his body, so he could potentially step on a small child. So, a home with kids over toddler age might be better. When I ask him, is there anything that upsets you? He says not much, although he would be a good guard dog for somebody. He indicates right away. Something that would upset him would be if somebody was knocking on the door. He would do the job of alerting his owners, hey, somebody's there. And then he shows me the door being opened, and if his people said it's okay, he would be totally calm and relaxed. So he would just kind of alert them to things that are outside the home.
All right. Oh, I know what I wanted to ask him. Would he like to spend some time up front in the lobby where I work and where the customers come in?
Well, he says, well, can we go outside a lot? He wants to know if he can go outside a lot because he thinks that's a small space. He wouldn't mind being up there. He may do some pacing. If he's got a lot of energy, he might do some pacing, Jan.
Okay.
When I ask, well, would pacing be a problem for you? He says, not really. He thinks he'd like to see a lot of people. And, Jan, when he's up there, just with that barrier in front, because I know what you're talking about because I've been to the SVCA there before, you want to make sure that you tell him his job is to be like an ambassador or a warm greeter to those, the public that's coming in and see, because they're going to have a really good view of him, just so that he doesn't get into the role of, oh, there's a barrier here. I'm supposed to let you know, Jan, when somebody's coming through the door. You don't want to perpetuate that behavior in that setting.
Okay, good to know.
And, yeah, it feels like if you're going to do that with him, just be willing to take him outside often. When I asked him, what does often look like to you, just every hour and a half is what he says.
Okay.
Yep. He just needs to go out and pee.
Okay.
He's very straightforward and honest about that. When I ask, is there anything you're scared of that people might need to know about if they adopted you? He says, no, not much spooks me. He's not noise sensitive. Even raised voices these days, it's like he looks at it more in curiosity, so I don't get a negative effect based on his prior, first home when people would raise their voice. He reacted then in a puppyish, scared manner, but I don't get he reacts or responds to that now. When I offer him the sounds of thunder and lightning, I don't get any reaction whatsoever out of him. How about the vacuum cleaner? That can set some dogs off. He laughs. He says, no, but I'll leave the room. I'll walk away. How about being left home alone? If people left you home alone inside the home, how would you act? He says, well, okay, again, I feel that he would go on guard duty. So if people who adopt him, Jan, don't want him to be a guard dog, and some people want that, they want the house protection, but if they don't, one thing they'd want to say to him is, as soon as he enters the household, your job is to be companion. It's to be my friend. I don't need a guard. I feel safe whether I'm here in the home or outside of it. That way it basically gives this dog permission to hopefully not take on the role of guard dog if they don't want that.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Just
one more question. So, Yukon, do you want to live with another dog? He says he could. He could. He's dog friendly. Small dogs, he thinks are hard to play with, though, small ones.
Yeah. Okay.
Dogs that are more his size, he likes to go on, play bows dogs will do with the front end, hind end sticking up in the air, tail wagging. He shows me that. What is that image about, please? He says it's about being playful with other dogs. He likes dogs that are about his size. There's a feeling like one other dog really would be more his preference versus living in a household of multiple dogs, unless they were going to go out for hikes together. He says if it was like a group hike, he wouldn't mind multiple, but he thinks that if there's more than just him and another dog, he wonders if there'd really be enough space inside the home.
Okay. And I just don't want him to be disappointed if the person that he's saying he wants to go home with, the staff person, Kim, she has multiple dogs, multiple cats.
Okay, so let me...
He doesn't want to go there. We'll find him the right home.
Yeah, he really wants to be an integral part of the family and get out.
Yeah, that wouldn't be the case.
I don't get from him. He can handle car rides, too, by the way. But honestly, walking and getting out and sniffing the ground on trail rides or walks, or trail walks, I should say, is more his preference than car riding. Some people love to take their animals here and there and everywhere in the car, and for him it's like, it's nice, and I see him enthusiastically getting into a vehicle, not being afraid of it, but it's not his idea of a huge amount of fun.
Okay. Back to him being up front, I do have a cat up there right now, Mango. Would he be okay with Mango up there? I could put Mango back in a cage.
Sure. So let's see. Mango and yourself and Jan up there. How would you feel about that? He thinks the cat's going to rest on someplace high, out of his basically line of sight. Anybody, even though you'd know the cat Mango is there, how would you feel about that? He shows me himself ignoring the cat.
Okay.
I mean, Jan, supervise until you're 100% sure that he's trustworthy, just to be safe. But
definitely,
I see the cat as really easygoing, and I don't see it triggering him.
Okay. Yeah, Mango doesn't like other cats around. She just wants to be the only cat. But she should be okay with the dog.
Gotcha.
She's a very big cat.
Yeah, sometimes, too, it depends. Have things that set dogs off, it depends totally on the cat. I mean, some dogs will totally ignore cats that are ease-filled and peaceful in their presence, and those cats that are going to run act like prey in that moment and will set them off. So it's interesting how some dogs respond to some cats. But I don't really see a huge interest in the cat. But again, watch just to be sure.
Oh, yes, and Mango won't run.
Okay.
She's a very big cat. I just have this one question, just curious. He was brought on the Halloween parade. How did he like that?
Okay, sure. So you can't help out that. He liked being seen. Didn't mind the crowd. He tells me he was very well behaved on leash and collar. He was a good boy. Didn't mind strangers petting him. Apparently there were people, they were probably part of the float or part of the group, because it feels more like that versus just the public outside of the float. But yeah, he just says yes. He says being in the parade, I shouldn't assume there's a float, but being in the parade, he says it was easy. I was viewable. People saw me. I was a good ambassador for the shelter.
What?
He's a good-natured dog.
He is. And they said he was a very good dog, and he was a good ambassador. Please let him know that. He's very good.
Thank you for the praise. He tells me he knows how to sit really well, and he shows me a paw coming up to, dogs will sometimes do that in a shake. It feels like somebody tried to teach him shake at one point.
Yeah.
Do you do this consistently? He says sometimes for a treat. Oh, you can easily train this dog with food. He's very food motivated.
Okay. All right. I am set. I feel very comfortable with everything I know so far about him.
Okay, great. So, Yukon, do you feel complete? He says yes, and he says, when am I going to get my forever home? Well, I'm going to let him know, but I was just asking you all these questions. The universe also hears your replies, not just Jan and I listening, but the universe hears it too, and that actually helps put the energy out to those people and situations, family-wise, that would work for you. So actually this conversation alone helps you attract your forever home. He says, and he says so he's surprised to hear that. All right, great. So I will thank him for his time and energy. And thank you as well, Jan, for bringing him forward so that we could chat with him today.
Well, tell him I'll be right over there very shortly.
Okay, you do like him. Well, he calls it a family favorite. He's a shelter favorite.
Yes, and I will take him out.
She will take you out. He hears that. He says he loves that. He'll take you for the walk, though, not the other way around.
Okay.
All right, great. So I will thank him. Thank you, Yukon. And we are all set for today, Jan.
Okay.
All right. Keep me posted on if it gets adopted or not. Okay?
Oh, I will. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. All right. You take care.
You too. Bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.